Thank you.
We can start now, Bhai.
Thank you. So, welcome everybody, and let us continue the conversation that we started yesterday. But first, I would like to know if there are any questions from yesterday's discussion. I hope that something of what I said you have understood. If you have understood, then you should have had some doubts. So please ask me if there is anything that you want to ask from yesterday. If there is nothing, Alim, you will have to mute yourself. There is some background noise that is coming. Fazle Ali.
Okay, sir. Just I will be.
Yeah. So.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum salam, Rashad. Yes.
Here my doubt is, अगर हम ये 3 years LLB करते हुए प्रैक्टिस कर सकते हैं क्या बाहर एक सीनियर एडवोकेट के पास?
कर सकते। अगर आपके पास LLB की डिग्री है तो आप प्रैक्टिस कर सकते। सीनियर एडवोकेट के पास भी कर सकते हैं, अकेले भी कर सकते। ठीक है। All right, now I want someone to volunteer. Out of all the people we have 29. I want one volunteer.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum salam. Kone bhai?
This is Tawheed Tabassum. We have Afroz,
yeah,
who will be volunteering us.
Acha, you are volunteering for Afroz?
No, sir. Actually, Afroz will be volunteering the meeting.
Okay. Afroz, can you unmute?
As a volunteer here.
Okay.
Yes, all right. This is Afroz.
Now, I hope you understand that when I say a volunteer, I'm going to ask you to do something.
Okay.
And that is, were you there in the class yesterday?
No, I was not. Today,
so I want a volunteer who was there in the class yesterday.
Right.
By a volunteer, I don't mean any office bearer. I just want any student to raise his or her hand. I am going to ask you to do something. But the condition is that you should have been in my class yesterday. Anyone? One of you has to raise his or her hand. Otherwise, I will pick up randomly. Yeah? Quick. There is no time. One person who was there in my class yesterday, raise your hand.
सर मेरा और एक डाउट ये है कि मैं पैरेलली MBA और LLB ऐसा पैरेलली कर सकता हूँ क्या?
नहीं कर सकते आप, एक ही डिग्री कर सकते हैं एक बार।
I think we have a raise of hand by Shabir.
No. Shabir was asking a question. I want somebody.
I can volunteer. I was part of the session yesterday.
Excellent. Shabir, so I want you in the next 3 minutes, or you can take 4 minutes, to tell us what you remember from yesterday's class. If you have made some notes, if you remember anything, just let us know what we did in yesterday's class.
Yeah, sure. So we went through a couple of current affairs, current things that are going on in the news. So first we talked about what are the magazines or newspaper to follow. So that is a
Correct.
source of truth for our current affairs. So one thing that you mentioned is Economist, and then EPW,
Yes.
then Live Mint, The Week. So these are some of the magazines and weeklies that you can follow to enhance your political and economic knowledge. Next, we dived into the current topics. So we spanned across multiple topics. One was COVID-related questions, then the political, like the recent cabinet reshuffle and the bills that were passed in the parliament.
Right.
And yeah, then a couple of them were asking about 370, all the 370, and then the Assam Mizoram dispute,
Yes.
and yeah, and recent appointees. Yeah, recent ministers from the cabinet reshuffle.
Okay. Very good.
And then we talked about Manrega.
Yes.
We talked about labor laws that were recently modified. Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's all on top of my head.
Excellent. Anybody wants to add anything that Shabbir might have missed? Yeah.
Yes, sir. We were discussing NPA, insolvency and bankruptcy details.
Excellent. Excellent. Who is that?
Mohammed
Ajmal?
Mubin. Mohammed
Oh,
Mubin.
Mohammed Mubin. Okay. Very good.
Yeah, you were explaining about the difference between insolvency and bankruptcy.
Excellent. Yeah. Very good.
And we were recollecting our minister's name, reshuffle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah. Very good. Anybody else remembers anything else that was missed out? Yeah.
And sir, labor laws.
Okay. और कोई और कुछ याद आया?
Also, we discussed about new education policy
Yeah.
and also UBI, Universal Basic Income.
Say that again.
That is UBI, Universal Basic Income.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah.
We were discussing about BIFR as well, sir.
Yes.
Panchayat Raj.
Mm-hmm. Good. I am asking you this question for two reasons. One is that I want to know whether you heard anything from what I said yesterday, but also for me to know what I said yesterday so that I don't say the same thing again. So thank you very much for remembering so much of what we discussed yesterday. And let us now move forward. I hope that some of you, I'm really hoping that some of you went to economist.com, at least one of you. Did anyone go and visit the Live Mint website? I gave you a link to one column. Did anyone visit that? No? Shabbir has, very well done, Shabbir. Very good. Yeah. So, one thing that is very important is that that when we tell you all these things, it is very easy to listen to what I'm saying and then go away and forget about it. Then you have lost the whole opportunity. It is very important for you that once you sit in a 2-hour class, you have to sit for at least 1 hour again and go through what has been said and do the little exercises that I asked you. Visit these websites, read them, at least see them to see how they look like. Okay. you see, this exam is not an easy exam. And there are lots of students who take the entrance test. There will be lots of them who go through very good coaching institutes. So you will get in only if you are able to make that effort. All right. It is very easy for me to keep talking about various things, but if you do not follow it up, then you are wasting your time. I have lots of time, so I'm okay. But your time gets wasted if you do not follow up. So it's very important. Just like I said about the newspaper, it is very important that after the class is over, at some point, before dinner, after dinner, late night, you should sit with your notes and go over them again. And that is why I asked you, to talk about what I discussed yesterday. So at least 2 or 3 of you remember what I talked about, and that is what will fetch you good results and marks. Right? So do that. All of you do that, not just 1 or 2. Now today, we discussed a little bit about the economy yesterday. But today I want to go and discuss the details of the economy, because a lot of current affairs has to do with the Indian economy. Let me start off by asking you some questions. What does the term GDP mean? Anybody?
Gross domestic
Gross
product.
domestic product.
Gross domestic product. Very good. Very good. What do you mean by GNP?
Gross net profit.
No.
Gross net product.
No.
Gross non-profit.
No.
Gross net.
So Safa has given the right answer, right?
Gross national product.
Yes. Very good. So now what does the GDP mean, and how do you calculate the GDP? GDP, as the term says, is the gross domestic product, which means that it is the total production that happens in a country in 1 year's time. Production of what? Production of goods and services. Right? So what is GDP? GDP is the total production of goods and services that happens in any country during the last year, during 1 year. How much is India's GDP? Does anybody have any idea?
Sir, 1.3
1.3?
trillion.
No. What is the goal in 2024? The Prime Minister has said that we will become a
Digital.
No, in terms of GDP, he said that he said our GDP in 2024 will reach how many trillion?
5 trillion.
Huh?
5 trillion.
Shabir, 5 trillion. Yes, not Mustafa, not 3 trillion. We are nearly 3 trillion now. We are about 2.6 trillion. So the goal is to reach 5 trillion. Okay. So we are approximately $2.6 trillion. But the more important figure is the GDP per capita. What is the GDP per capita? What do you mean by GDP per capita? But before that, go ahead. Go ahead. Somebody was answering that question correctly.
Per person, sir. GDP per person.
Very good, Safa. So what you do is the total GDP divided by the total population. Okay. How do you calculate GDP? The formula for GDP. Does anyone know the formula for GDP? No. Okay. The formula for GDP is total consumption plus total investment plus total government spending. Right? It is not so difficult to remember, but it is. So if you see the formula, it will be total consumption that happens in the economy, right? The total consumption that happens in the economy, meaning how much of goods and services do we consume in 1 year? Okay. That is the formula. Yeah, that's right. Fazal has given it. Total consumption plus total income plus total investment by private people, total government expenditure plus export minus import. Right? Fazal, you have to open a bracket and it is X plus X minus Z, meaning the net exports. Right? All of you, there are various ways of calculating GDP. One of them, the most commonly used, is when you add total consumption to total investment to total government expenditure to net exports. That is what GDP means. Now, GDP is a measure that calculates what is the total production in the economy. So if the total production in the economy is very high, it means the GDP is very high. Which is the country that has the highest GDP in the world?
USA.
Yes.
US. Very good. Second highest?
China.
Very good. Third?
Canada.
Canada. No.
Bangladesh.
नहीं.
Russia.
बांग्लादेश बहुत
America.
छोटा है. अमेरिका नंबर 1 है भाई.
Qatar.
न्यूजीलैंड
Germany.
Huh?
Russia.
No. Russia is very small.
Wait.
Germany.
Qatar.
न्यूयॉर्क
New York is a city.
Japan.
Okay, so Fazal has written that. Right? US, China, Japan, Germany, UK,
Qatar.
France, India. Look at France and India, they are very close to each other. Right? So sometimes India is number 6, sometimes France is number 6. But the top 7 economies in the world are US, China, Japan, Germany, UK, France, and India. Are all these rich countries?
Developing countries.
They are all developed countries except for India. They are all developed countries. Why is India a developing country? Because, as Safa said, India's per capita GDP is very small. You see, the US, $20 trillion is the GDP divided by 300 million people. China, 13.4 trillion divided by 1.5 billion people. Japan, 4.97 divided by 300. Germany, 4 divided by 150. UK divided by 0.5. France divided by 0.7. India is 2.72 divided by 1.3 billion. That is why the per capita GDP becomes very small. Yes, Fazal, what is your question? Yeah. Japan is a very interesting country. You know, very often, most of us who teach, we always take the example of the US, UK, Europe. Sometimes we talk about China, but very glaring omission is Japan. Japan is the most fascinating country that you can think of. See, Japan, 150 years ago, was a rich country. There was a Meiji dynasty in Japan, which had gone through something called the Meiji Restoration. And after the Meiji Restoration, Japan became a very rich country. But Japan's problem was that Japan was a country which in economics is known as a autarky. Right? Note that term. What is an autarky? An autarky is a country that does not trade with any other country. That is completely closed. It has nothing to do with the rest of the world. You just lock up your borders, don't allow anybody to come, don't allow anybody to go, don't import, don't export. So Japan was an autarky in the 19th century. Are there any autarkies in the world today which do not trade with any other country? There are none. No, there are. The only example that you can think of is North Korea, and North Korea, very good. Bhutan is another country like that. But otherwise, there are no autarkies. So France was an autarky, and then it came and started fighting the First World War, and then it fought the Second World War and became a poor country at the end of the Second World War because it had lost the war. But in no time, by the 1970s, Japan was again a rich country. It was making the world's best automobiles. By 1990s, Japan had collapsed. But even after collapsing, it remained a very rich country. In 2002, it had a big tsunami. After that tsunami, for a few days, Japan was down, but it came back and again became a very big economy. So Japan is a very strange country. It has always remained in the top three, despite, as Fazal says, every now and then there is an earthquake, every now and then there is a fire, there's a volcano, they lost the 2 world wars, but still Japan is a very big country. So Japan is a very interesting place. When I went there for the first time, I was really baffled that it is such a unique country that you can't really imagine. There was one trip I went to where I went to China and to Japan both. So when I went to China, this was long ago, I was staying in this very fancy hotel, but I could not order anything because nobody knew English there. It was very difficult for me to explain to people what I wanted. Finally, some waiter, whatever, understood some English and got something. From there, I went to Japan. There it was even worse. And nobody understood English. And that made me realize that the second and the third richest countries in the world don't know any English. Very few people there understanding. You don't see English billboards and so on. So it's a very strange thing, but these are very unique countries. Anyway, so there is the GDP, which is used to measure economic growth. Economic growth is measured by something called GDP growth rate. The GDP is the total production. GDP growth rate is how much GDP has grown in the last 1 year. So you take GDP this year minus GDP last year divided by the GDP last year and into 100%. And that is what gives you the GDP growth rate. What is India's GDP growth rate this year? Or what was India's GDP growth rate last year? That is the more important question.
Around 6%.
6%?
14%.
14%.
2 point something.
7.7%.
Yeah?
7.7%.
7.7.
This year.
Hmm?
Last year it was minus 26.
Minus 26 was for 1 quarter.
Okay.
Right? But the overall was minus 7%. Right? So, what was happening was that because of the COVID, the growth rate of the country fell down significantly. There was a long time for which India's growth rate had grown very high. and this year we are expecting that it will grow by 11%, because it contracted by 7% last year. So that is what is known as the GDP growth rate. Now, the question that is important here is that if the GDP is very high, then is the country a rich country? And the answer is no, because the GDP can be very high, but the population can be very high also. Right? And therefore, while the total GDP is high, the per capita GDP is low. So people are poor. Does population have any role in the growth of GDP? Yes, it does. See, look at GDP in your table. Which are the countries where GDP is high? US, China, Japan, Germany. What is the common feature about them? They are all very highly populated countries. They are not as highly populated as India. But you need a basic population. If there is no population, then you will have very little GDP. Like Kuwait, for example, has a very high per capita GDP, but its total GDP is very small because it has a very small population. So actually, a high population means that you have the potential to have high GDP growth, and that is why all this population control and these new laws that Yogi Adityanath is thinking of are so very silly, because they actually reduce GDP growth rate. Anyway, therefore, 100 years ago, when the GDP concept came up and GDP became the measurement of a country's growth, people said, well, GDP is not such a useful thing, because GDP is just the total production. You don't know who is producing. If one half of the country is producing and the other half is starving, then you don't know whether the whether a high GDP is good or not. And therefore, the other measure that was taken, and this is the important thing, that under the UNDP, two economists, one whose name you know very well. Do you know India's most famous economist?
Chidambaram.
Raghuram Rajan, yes, but who is more popular than Raghuram Rajan?
Manmohan Singh.
Okay, so in the year 1990, two economists, India's most famous economist. Who are the two economists? Yeah, Afroz is right. The first economist to have won a Nobel Prize in India was Amartya Sen. Who was the second? Who is the second Indian economist to win a Nobel Prize?
Mukherjee.
So you're just any Bengali name is okay.
Abhijit Banerjee.
Abhijit Banerjee, right? So,
Sorry.
No problem. It's often a mistake that we can make. So Abhijit Banerjee won the Nobel Prize. Amartya Sen, along with another very famous economist whose name from Pakistan, whose name was Mehboob ul Haq. Amartya Sen and Mehboob ul Haq defined a new way of measuring economic development, and that was called the Human Development Report, or the Human Development Rank. The United Nations Development Program, the UNDP, got Amartya Sen and Abhijit Banerjee to Amartya Sen and Mehboob ul Haq to calculate the Human Development Report or Human Development Rank. And therefore, the Human Development index or the human development rank was developed by Amartya Sen and Mehboob Haq. From 1990 till now, every year the UNDP produces what is known as the Human Development Index. And in the Human Development Index, they give a rank. And according to that rank, what is India's rank in the Human Development Index? It's a rank.
Second.
No. India is
130.
excellent. Who was that?
Sir, it's Karina, sir.
So the last year, India's rank in the Human Development rank or the Human Development Index was 131. Over the last 30 years, this rank has been improving from, it went up from 144 to, when I was studying, 144, then it went to 142 and so on. And year before, what is the bad news is that last year it was 131, but 2 years ago it was 130. So after improving for such a long time, in 2019, the rank fell down by 1 rank. It hasn't happened ever in the last 30 years. So India's rank actually fell by 1 and went to 131. So according to the Human Development rank or Human Development Index, India is right now at 131. All right. Which is the country which has the highest rank? Can you take a guess? Number 1 rank?
So USA or Canada?
No, neither.
Norway.
Very good. Yeah. Norway is the country with the highest rank. Okay. All right. So what does the Human Development Index measure? How is it calculated? How do you calculate the HDI? What is it that, like I said, that in the GDP, you are calculating consumption plus investment plus government expenditure plus exports minus imports. What does the Human Development Index do? The Human Development Index is a very interesting thing. What Amartya Sen and Mehboob Haq said was that it is not enough to earn money. What is the meaning of HDI? Fazal, the meaning of HDI is Human Development Index. And HDR is Human Development Rank or Human Development Report. So what is this Human Development Index? The index says, the basic belief is that income is not enough. Suppose there is one family near your house which has lots of income. And next to them is a family which has moderate income. Which family is better off? How will you decide which is better? Can you decide that? If there is one country which has lots of money and another country which does not have lots of money, but the country that has lots of money has no schools or has no hospitals. Otherwise, countries like Kuwait and all, or Libya, will be the highest ranked countries. They have lots of income because of oil. But there is no other facility that is available. Therefore, Amartya Sen and Mehboob Haq said that growth, that development should not just be seen in terms of income. It should be income. That's why they talk about GNI. What is GNI? GNI is the gross national income. So you take the GNI per capita, or how much does each person earn? Add to that the healthcare access in the country, and to that add education. They said that development means that a country is good if the country improves its income, but it should also increase its healthcare and it should also make its citizens educated. So there are three variables that are used to calculate the Human Development Index. The gross national income per capita or the per capita income, how much is a person earning on an average, plus what is the health of the country, plus what is the education level. How do you measure health? Can health be measured? How do you know that a country is healthy?
Life expectancy of the people.
Excellent, excellent, right? So you do what is known as life expectancy. What does life expectancy mean?
How long can people live?
What do you mean by that? Tell me. Yeah, anybody?
The longer an average person lives.
Okay. So life expectancy, that is a good answer. Life expectancy means, Bakhar, life expectancy means that those who are born today, how long will they live for on an average? Today, India's life expectancy is 69. That an average Indian born today will live for 69 years. When I was born in 1966, life expectancy was 46. So according to that, I should have died 8 years ago, right? If I was the average person, I would have died 8 years ago. In 1951, India's life expectancy was 31. On an average, an Indian lived for 31 years. Today, an average Indian lives for 69. However, is it good or is it bad? It is very bad. There are very few countries in the world whose life expectancy is less than 70. The average is 72. Yeah, thank you. But I'm talking of averages. So life expectancy is the average number of years that a person is expected to live in any country. So India's life expectancy is very poor. And that is why the Human Development Rank comes crashing down. How do you measure education? How do you know that on an average in a country, education is good?
Percentage of literacy?
Normally it is literacy rate, but what the Human Development Report does or the HDI does, it takes because literacy is a very strange thing. Literacy means everybody should be able to scribble their name. That is what literacy means. So it's very easy to teach them that, but that is not education. What they say is that education is the mean years of schooling. How many years does an average person in that country go to school for? Understood? The mean years of schooling is the number of years that an average person goes to school for in a country. Take a guess. What is the average years of schooling in a country like India? In India, how many years does an average Indian go to school for? Take a guess. Anybody?
7.
Not bad, not bad. Anybody else?
Fifth standard.
10 years.
The mean years of schooling for India is 4.5 years. Okay. All of you in this classroom are very, very lucky people because you have all gone to school for 12 years and 14 years because you have, sensible parents who sent you to school and kept you there and paid for your school. In most cases, students drop out after 2-3 years. Average is 4.5. It is among the lowest in the world. And that is why India's rank is so low. It is not just because our income is low. It is also because our health is poor and our education is poor. So this is what is known as the Human Development Index, the Human Development Report. You should remember this, that our Human Development rank is 131. The Human Development Report is brought out every year by the United Nations Development Program. The Human Development Index was developed by two economists, Amartya Sen and Mahbubullah. Okay, this is what you have to remember, because these are questions that are often asked when you look at, when you see economy and economic condition and so on. Now, let us move on to the next issue. And the next issue is the issue of poverty. Do we have poor people in India?
Yes.
Yes. The question is, who is poor? How do you define somebody who is poor?
It is the BPL, below poverty line.
So you are below poverty line.
Yes.
What does below poverty line mean? How do you know that I am below poverty line or I am above poverty line? What is the definition of PPL?
What it takes for a person to survive a day.
Okay. Anybody else? So, in India, poverty is not defined by income. Okay. The definition of poverty is that this so-and-so person is poor if that person cannot afford to consume 2,400 calories a day. That is the definition of poverty in India. You understand? The definition of poverty is that if you cannot consume, if you don't have enough money, if you don't have enough food to consume 2,400 calories per day in urban India and 2,400 calories in rural India and 2,100 calories in urban India, then you're poor. Got it? Yes. Yes, Ruhina. Excellent. So, if you have one plate of rice and some dal twice a day, then you are rich. Then you are not poor, because that big plate of rice, if you eat it twice a day, you will get 2,400 calories. But a large percentage of India does not get even that much every day. A large proportion of India does not get 2,400 calories in rural areas and 2,100 calories in urban areas, even today. Now, how much is that percentage? It keeps changing. Right? According to some estimates, it is 25%. Some people say it is 21%. Somebody says it is 18%. But what it means is that there are a lot of people in India who are very, very poor. Right? The last figure says that 6% of the population is extremely poor. So there are various ways of measuring poverty. The most famous measurement was carried out by an economist whose name was Suresh Tendulkar. Suresh Tendulkar was a very famous economist. He is no more. But Suresh Tendulkar was the last person. The Suresh Tendulkar committee had calculated the extent of poverty in India. And according to them, poverty in India is 37%. That 37% in India, of 37% of people in India, which is 360 million people, or actually 430 million people, are below poverty line. This was 10 years ago that it was done. Now, has the number gone up or come down? We don't know. It could have gone up because of COVID. No, there is no standard for plate or meal, Fazal. It is just calories. If you have consumed a lot of calories, then you are not poor. So actually, the ones who are above poverty line also are very poor people, because all they have consumed is some rice or some rotis in North India. And there is no other provision. You eat this much of rice every day and don't have any money for education, for healthcare, etc. You are still not BPL. You are still not poor because you have eaten so much food. So that is our calculation of poverty. This is another question that often comes: that what is poverty? Who is poor? What do you mean by BPL? You should remember that poverty is measured by calorific intake. If the calorie intake is less than 2,400 calories, that is how we define poverty in India. Now, the last point before we break is that there is poverty on one hand, and the other problem is the problem of inequality. Now, the question I am asking all of you is, which is the bigger problem? Is poverty the bigger problem, or is inequality?
Inequality, sir.
I asked you the question. Okay. I asked you the question on how do we measure poverty. The question I am asking you now is, how do we measure inequality? So think about this. Think about the issue of inequality. It's a very serious issue. It is a very big issue. And when you come back at 7:05, then we will start talking about how inequality is measured and how inequality can be tackled. Rich becoming richer. Yes. All right. So we will break for, right? See you then at 7:05.
अभी
All right, so I hope you are back.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
So we were talking about inequality, right? Somebody tell me, how do you measure inequality? Poverty ka we just discussed how you measure poverty. But how do you measure inequality? So inequality is measured by a very simple, one of the ways of measuring inequality is by way of what is known as an old statistical method that was developed by an Italian mathematician, and his name was Gini. So poverty is measured by what is known as the Gini coefficient. So for those of you who remember your maths classes, when you what do you do in statistics? You study a distribution. If that distribution is far away from the mean, then it means that the range is very vast, and therefore there is tremendous inequality. Don't worry if you don't understand this, but the Gini coefficient is really the sum of the standard deviations from the mean. Or more, if that is more, then obviously inequality is more. According to the Gini coefficient, the scale that is used is 0 to 1. 0 meaning no inequality, and 1 meaning very high, complete inequality. That is what is known as the Gini coefficient. India's Gini coefficient is not very high. India's Gini coefficient is about 37%. But the problem is that it is growing very high. It is getting very, very high. There is estimate that we haven't measured Gini coefficient in some time, but now some people say that Gini coefficient in India is nearly 50%. The most unequal countries in the world are South Africa, Namibia, Zambia, Brazil. These are countries that are very unequal. Okay, so inequality is measured using that is what you should remember, that inequality is measured using the Gini coefficient. Then around that time, Gini was a Italian mathematician. Around that time, there was another mathematician in the US called Max Lorenz, and he developed something called the Lorenz curve. The Lorenz curve is the other way of measuring income inequality. So if the slope of that graph is very high, then what happens is that you will therefore get a sense of what should be the distribution of income and what is actually the distribution of income. So Lorenz curve is constructed by showing the distribution of income, and that will tell you how unequal a country is. So that is why we use the other measurement of inequality is the Lorenz curve. So if the Lorenz curve has a 45-degree line between x and y axis, that is equal. The line that is closer to that is more equal. The line that is far away from that is less equal. It is the same concept, but it shows the spread of inequality better than the Gini coefficient. Okay. So what is the actual definition of inequality? Actual definition of inequality is where the difference between the poor and the rich is very high. That is the definition of inequality. In any situation, you are all students. If all of you get the same marks in the exam, then you are equal students. If some people get 10 and some people get 95, then it is a very unequal distribution. Which is better? That is for you to think about, right? So inequality is where there is tremendous difference in income. Some are very poor and some are very rich. That is what is known as inequality. Okay. Now, inequality was for the first time talked about by Gini and Lorenz and whatever. But the new discussion on inequality, and these are the other facts that you should know. inequality in modern world became very important because of one very famous economist whose name was Thomas Piketty. This is a very favorite question in several exams. That what did Thomas Piketty is a French mathematician who used to teach at Harvard University. And Thomas Piketty, about 7 years ago, wrote a very phenomenal book. Thomas Piketty wrote a book which really, challenged the whole world. And that book by Thomas Piketty was called Capital in the 21st century. Right? For some of you who like to read, this is a wonderful book to read. Right? This is a very good book to read for those of you, especially those of you who understand maths. This book called Capital in the 21st Century was the book that was written that actually showed that inequality in the world is rising at a very fast pace. He wrote this in 2013. It came in English in 2014, and it became a very, very influential book, which showed that countries in the world are becoming very unequal. All right, so remember this name, Thomas Piketty, and his book called Capital in the 21st Century, which showed that inequality in the world is rising like never before. Okay? That is what is meant by inequality. Now, let us go further. How do you reduce poverty? You reduce poverty by redistributing money, right? Taking from the rich and giving to the poor. How do you reduce inequality? Same thing. You take from the rich and give to the poor. And therefore, there are a lot of new solutions that people are saying should be used to tackle inequality. One of them is called a inheritance tax. Right? This is a new term that is being used. All of you should know this. Inheritance tax. What is an inheritance tax? When I die and I leave behind 100 rupees to my son, is there a tax that he pays? When my son earns 100 rupees from from his salary or from his work, then from there he pays 30% of tax, which is the Indian tax rate for those who earn above a certain amount. But when he gets money that he inherits from his father, then does he pay any tax? He does not. In India, he does not. So therefore, the very rich people, when they die, they transfer all their money to their children, and they get the same amount of money and become even richer. And that is why one of the proposals that is being floated is that, like in the US and Europe, that there should be an inheritance tax. It is also called a death tax. Yeah, even if, see, the amount is already taxed for me, I have paid that tax. But when the money goes to my son, he has not paid the tax. Who should pay tax? Tax should be paid by the one who is earning the money, whose income it is. When it was my income, I paid the tax. Now when it goes to you, it is your income and you have not paid the tax. That is the argument that is used for inheritance tax. Whereas Muhammad Mohiuddin's point is also right. The thing is that my father has already paid the tax. On the same money, why are you taxing again? But the reason it is said is that because otherwise you will become rich for no reason. If a son inherits my money, has he worked for it? Is it his income? No, he's just got it because he was lucky. Right? That is the definition of inheritance tax, and that is why all these rich people when they die, they are very worried. What will happen? Half my money will go away in taxes. So that is why they set up trusts. They make foundations. If you make a foundation, then there is no income tax. So very rich people.
But sir, one question here.
Yes.
How does it reduces the inequality?
Because what will happen is that, so when I die, I have 1 lakh rupees. Then 30,000 rupees the government takes away. That 30,000 it gives to the poor. And my son who would have got 1 lakh rupees will only get 70,000. So he'll not become very rich. So the inequality won't be very high. That is the reason.
Yeah, if government gives it back to the poor, then of course.
So one is the government giving back to the poor. The other is that the son gets only half the money. So he doesn't become that rich.
Yeah.
That is why inequality becomes less.
Yeah.
All right. So there are various terms that are used: inheritance tax, death tax, and estate tax. Estate tax is a tax that is imposed on the value of your property. So when some Birla or whatever dies and has 30,000 crores worth of property, then the estate tax takes that much money from the inheritors, from the children. So that is one thing that we are talking about now. Whether it will be imposed or not is not known. Okay. Now we will go back to talking about how about distribution made in life itself. Then there is no tax. That is why you will find that what people do is before they die, they give all the property in the names of their children, and the tax is reduced. Okay. In fact, you will see that in the US, a lot of these very rich people are getting divorced, isn't it? That Jeff Bezos got divorced. He was the world's richest fellow. Half the money went to his wife, that Magdalene Scott. Bill Gates got divorced. Half the money went to Melinda Gates. What they are saying, what some people are saying is they are getting divorced because they don't want to pay taxes. Because the money becomes half and therefore the tax rate comes down. So if the distribution is made in the life itself, then it's not taxed. But you don't know, most people don't know when they are going to die, and they don't want to leave everything to their children and then live for another 10 years. So a lot of people die intestate, meaning that they die with a lot of money with them. That in the US and so on, there is a huge tax against. In India, there is no tax yet. Anyway, so now let us go back to the issue of yes, Fadal, heard many times. What did you hear many times? Fadal? Okay. Fadal can't hear us. All right, doesn't matter. So there are various theorems, there are various theories of poverty. Fazal is talking about Chebyshev's inequality. That Chebyshev's inequality is a statistical measure that says that the probability of inequality is always less than 25%. So there are various studies, but basically you should remember that inequality is measured most popularly by the Gini index and by a Lorenz curve. Okay, and inequality is going up in India. One of the most famous reports that talked about inequality going up is, and you should see this, it is the Oxfam's report on inequality. The Oxfam report on inequality has shown that the level of inequality in India is going up at a very fast rate. In fact, they are saying that it is at the fastest rate in the whole world. And that is why last year you found that while everybody else was losing money, the two people who gained a lot of money in India were Mr. Gautam Adani and Mr. Mukesh Ambani. So, and Gautam Adani, for example, it is said earned more money than even Bill Gates did in the last 1 year of COVID. So, so inequality is going up. But let me come to a more fundamental issue, and that more fundamental issue is that when you are poor, one of the biggest problems of the poor is something called inflation. What does inflation mean? And this is another set of current issues, current affairs that you will find
Rise in
questions.
the price of
Yes, Safa, price?
rise in the price of commodities.
Okay. So there is a slight difference to inflation and purchasing power and prices and expensive. Inflation is defined as a persistent price rise. If some price goes up today and comes down tomorrow, it's not inflation. Inflation is when the price keeps going up for 1 week, for 1 month, for 1 year. For example, right now we have a very high fuel inflation. Why? Because every day for the last 6 months, petrol and diesel prices are going up. There are various kinds of inflation. One is, as I just told you, it is fuel inflation. Right? Fuel inflation basically measures the price rise in fuel. Fuel is what? Fuel is electricity, petrol, diesel, kerosene. All these are examples of are part of
energies.
Energy. Yes. Then there is something called core inflation. Core inflation is everything except energy and food. If you remove both of them, then you get something called core inflation. If you calculate inflation only for food, it is called food inflation. The overall inflation, which includes food, energy, non-energy, FMCG, if you include everything, then that is known as headline inflation. Right? This is what you read in the headlines. Fazal, expenses are high compared to income is not inflation. Inflation has nothing to do with income. Inflation is only about prices. If prices go up continuously, that is called inflation. Whether there is income or not doesn't matter. Now, what happens in some places is that prices go up, income also goes up. And therefore, it doesn't matter. If you are buying a bread for 10 rupees and your income is 1,000 rupees, if the bread becomes 20 rupees and your income becomes 2,000 rupees, it doesn't make any difference to you because the same percentage of money you're paying for bread. And that is why I said inflation is a problem for the poor, because the poor people, their income does not go up. Most of the rich people, their income goes up when inflation goes up. Got it? So most of us don't feel the impact of inflation because whenever inflation goes up, our salaries go up. In the government, actually there is a calculation that is made. A calculation made every 6 months on how much inflation has happened, and that much money is increased in everybody's salary. That there is a term for that. There is a term
dearness allowance.
Dearness allowance. Excellent. Right? The word dear has very many meanings. Dear is not just chahita. Dear is also something that is costly. Okay. Yes, one of the reasons for inflation right now is the high level of taxation. There are various reasons for inflation. One reason for inflation is called supply side inflation. The other is called demand side inflation. Supply side inflation happens when supply goes down. The supply of crude oil goes down, so the price of petrol goes up. Sometimes it is because of demand side inflation. When people start demanding more of a particular good and the supply is low, that prices go. So, for example, in the marriage season, the demand for gold goes up. Because the demand goes up, the price goes up. That is why inflation comes from two reasons. One is supply side reason and the other is demand side. In things like fuel, etc., it is usually a supply side. Or sometimes in the winter, if you are in Europe, in the winter, the demand for energy goes up because it becomes very cold. Everybody switches on their heating. In India, in the summer, everybody switches on their air conditioning. So the demand for electricity goes up, and that is why the price of electricity goes up. So therefore, inflation is very, very simply what I want all of you to remember is inflation is persistent price rise. Inflation is of various kinds. If you take overall inflation, it's called headline inflation. From headline inflation, you remove energy inflation and food inflation, you have what is called as core inflation. Core inflation goes up, it means that everybody is going to get impacted by that. How is inflation calculated in India? Inflation is calculated in India by two indexes. One is called the CPI. Anyone who knows what CPI is? CPI is called the Consumer Price Index and WPI is called the Wholesale Price Index. As the name suggests, if the prices are going up in your local retail shop, in your local kirana shop, in your local mall, then that is called as Consumer Price Index. Whereas if you take the data from the wholesaler and the prices at the wholesale go up, then that is called Wholesale Price Index. So if you calculate inflation using CPI, it is called consumer inflation. If you calculate inflation using WPI, then it is wholesale inflation. These are the two methods by which we calculate inflation in India. There is another term there which is called, yes, please. Somebody is saying something. There is another situation and that is called deflation. Deflation is the opposite. What is inflation? Price going up persistently. Deflation, price going down persistently. For example, in the real estate market during COVID times, the price kept going down consistently. So there is a real estate deflation. The rental market saw a deflation. So in certain times, when there is very excessive supply and very low demand, then you have a deflationary impact on the economy. Now, go back to basic economics. When price goes up, what goes up? First definitions of economics. When price goes up, what goes up? Not income.
Demand.
No, demand comes down when price goes up. Remember the two curves that we draw? The demand curve is downward sloping. Supply, right? Whenever price goes up, the supply goes up. What is supply? Supply is growth, isn't it? Supply is the production. So whenever there is inflation, whenever prices go up, the production goes up, which means GDP goes up, which means growth goes up. So inflation is almost always accompanied by high economic growth and vice versa. When there is high economic growth, then there is high inflation. When India was having 8, 9, 10% growth 10 years ago, inflation was also 8, 9, 10%. Right now, in the last 4 or 5 years after Mr. Modi, when the economic growth started going down, inflation also started going down. Therefore, there is one problem that is happening right now. This year, what is happening? Economic growth is going down. Inflation is going up. Opposite things are happening. Prices are going up. All of you are seeing petrol prices, food prices, but the growth rate is going down. And that situation where you have negative growth or slowing down of growth, but high inflation, that situation is called, anybody? Stagflation. Why is it called stagflation? Because the economy is stagnant. The economy is not growing, but prices are growing. Prices are going up, but supply is not going up. Otherwise, what will happen? Whenever prices go up, supply will go up. When supply goes up, employment will go up. When employment goes up, consumption goes up. When consumption goes up, GDP goes up. But here a strange situation is happening. Prices are going up, but supply is coming down. That is why unemployment is going up. And that is why a situation which is of great significance in any economic growth model is a situation which is known as stagflation. Stagflation is a situation where growth is stagnant and prices are going up. That happens very rarely. It only happens in economies or in countries which have serious economic problems. That's why India today is under a very serious economic crisis, where we have economic growth coming down and prices going up. In other countries where economic growth is coming down, inflation is also coming down. In India, growth is going down, prices are going up. And that is why we have so much unemployment and so much poverty in the country.
Sir, one question here.
Yes.
In the ideal scenario, if inflation is going high and also improving the growth of the country.
Correct.
In that case, is it not affecting the poor people, the high inflation?
Very right. That is why, you see, that's a very good question. If inflation goes up, supply goes up. If supply goes up, growth goes up. Therefore, why should we not have high prices? The reason we should not have high prices is because the poor get impacted. The rich don't get impacted by high prices. The rich actually make money. That's why whenever there is inflation, you will find that the rich become richer. And Feroz is right, that the poor get affected. That is why in every country, every developing country, there is a very tight control over inflation. How do we control inflation in a country like India? We control inflation. The institution that controls inflation in the country is called the Reserve Bank of India. How does the Reserve Bank of India control inflation? This is what happened last week, so it's a very current affair issue.
Yeah.
What did the RBI do? The RBI, what it uses is, RBI has a committee called the MPC. What does MPC stand for?
Monetary Policy Committee.
Monetary Policy Committee. Excellent. So RBI has a Monetary Policy Committee. What does Monetary Policy Committee do? It maintains the money supply of the economy. You see, one of the major reasons for inflation is the amount of money in the market. If the money supply is high, then inflation will be high. So one of the ways to reduce inflation is to reduce the money in the market. How do you reduce money in the market? By increasing the interest rate. Now, how does that happen? Suppose you have money in your bank and you have kept 1,000 rupees in your bank and the interest rate is 10%. Now, if the interest rate goes up to 15%, will you put more money in the bank or less money in the bank?
More.
You get my question? More money.
More
Why?
money in the
Because you are
bank.
getting more interest. Now, if I reduce interest rate, you will take out your money. So therefore, the Monetary Policy Committee, what it does is that if it wants lesser money in the market, it increases the interest. If it wants higher money in the market, it reduces the interest. The RBI announces a meeting. It announces something called the repo rate. Repo rate. What is the repo rate? the repo rate is the interest rate that the Reserve Bank charges when it gives loans to other banks.
For
Remember
parking the
this
funds.
is an important point. The repo rate is the interest rate that RBI charges to banks. Suppose SBI wants to borrow from RBI. Reserve Bank says, here is 100 crore rupees, your rate will be 4%. Right now, the repo rate in India is 4%. Yes, of course. That repo rate is where RBI gives money to other banks. Exactly. Right? You will see that Afroz has written what I have said. Repo rate is used by monetary policy bodies to control inflation. There is something called a reverse repo rate. What is a reverse repo rate? What is the repo rate? Repo rate is interest that banks give when they borrow from RBI. Reverse repo is what RBI gives when it borrows from banks, or when the banks put money into RBI. So the repo rate and the reverse repo rate are two measures of controlling inflation in the country. Repo rate, very simply, repo rate is the rate that RBI charges when it gives money to other banks. Reverse repo rate is the interest rate that RBI gives when other banks put money into RBI. It is with this combination of repo rate and reverse repo rate that the Reserve Bank of India controls money supply in the economy, and the money supply in the economy, which is called monetary policy, then regulates the inflation rate. There are two other terms that you should remember, and those are two other ways in which the Reserve Bank controls inflation. One is using what is known as an SLR. SLR, has anybody heard of SLR? SLR stands for the statutory liquidity ratio. Right? You should understand. Statutory liquidity ratio. What does SLR mean? SLR means that the Reserve Bank tells every government by law, that is why it is called statutory, it is a law. It says that if you are a bank, if you are running a bank, and if you have 100 rupees of deposits, then you cannot lend more than 75 rupees. You should keep some part of the money. You should keep some part of the money with you in liquid form. What is a liquid form? Liquid form is a form where you can quickly change it into cash. Usually it is gold or it is stocks. Right? So SLR is the statutory liquidity ratio. So the Reserve Bank says that 18.25% of the total deposit must be kept by the bank. Yes, of course. Must be kept by the bank in liquid form. So if it increases the SLR, money supply goes down and inflation goes down. Just remember this term, statutory liquidity ratio. The total amount, the percentage of deposits that a bank has to keep in the form of liquid assets. 18.5, Fazal. Right now, statutory liquidity ratio is 18.5. In the last monetary policy committee, 18.25% was the statutory liquidity ratio. The other thing that the bank does, the Reserve Bank does, is that it tells banks to maintain a, this is the other term, that each bank must maintain a CRR. So statutory liquidity ratio was the amount of deposits that should be kept in liquid assets like gold and stock. Some amount of money, the Reserve Bank says, has to be kept in the form of cash only. That if there is a 100 rupee deposit, then 4 rupees, CRR is 4%. 4 rupees should be kept in the form of cash. So every bank has to keep SLR plus CRR, 18.25 plus 4, 22.25% of the money Every bank has to keep it, cannot give away that money as loans. If that percentage is increased, then the amount of money, more money in the market, you reduce SLR, CRR. If you want less money in the market, you increase SLR and CRR. You want, when you release more money in the market, you cause inflation. When you take out more money from the market, you decrease inflation. This is what the Reserve Bank of India does. So,
Sir,
the final
sir,
point that I want to make today, yes.
Sir, having said that, is it good to have high inflation or good to have low inflation?
No, it is never good to have inflation. It is never good to have high inflation, because high inflation leads to poverty, leads to prices being high, and all the poor people suffer.
Okay.
Never. High inflation is never a good idea. Okay.
But
the inflation can be a little higher, you see, than what it is now. But it should never be very high. It should not. Okay. So therefore, there is.
But in one direction, it is leading to the growth of the country.
Inflation, and then there is growth. But after a while, you see, inflation cannot be controlled. If inflation is allowed to go up, then at some point in time, inflation becomes hyper.
Okay.
After it, that is what happened in Iran and so on. So inflation can never be controlled. Inflation always, it is best to keep inflation at a very low level. You can't decide that we will allow inflation to go up to so much and then we will stop it. After a while, inflation becomes an animal of its own volition, and you can't stop it. Fazal says that we have heard of NPA. NPA is a completely different thing, Fazal. NPA is non-performing asset. Non-performing assets are bad debts. When a bank does not has given out loan and the person who has taken that loan does not return that money, that's called an NPA. That is nothing to do with the RBI, but or has something to do with the RBI, but it has nothing to do with the monetary policy. So therefore, inflation is controlled by monetary policy, and taxation is controlled by the other policy. And what is that other policy? There are two policies on money. There is a monetary policy which controls money supply, and the fiscal policy that controls tax rates. Monetary policy is defined by the Reserve Bank of India. Fiscal policy is defined by the Ministry of Finance. That is what the annual budget does. In the annual budget, the government announces a fiscal policy. Fiscal policy includes all tax-related measures. You can reduce inflation by reducing taxes also. That is how fiscal policy reduces inflation. Fiscal policy. If the RBI is doing it, it is monetary policy. If the RBI is controlling money supply, that is monetary policy. If the Ministry of Finance is tinkering with taxes, then that is called fiscal policy. High taxes reduce money supply. Low taxes increase money supply, and therefore low taxation is also known as a stimulus. If I repeat my statement, monetary policy is a policy that defines the money supply, liquidity in the market, whereas fiscal policy defines the tax policy in the country. A loose money supply or a stimulus monetary policy increases the money supply in a market by decreasing interest. A tight fiscal policy increases the tax rate to reduce money supply and to reduce inflation. Should remember, those are the last two things I want to talk about today. That is monetary policy and fiscal policy. All right, so I think, yeah, higher inflation could lead to a market crashing. Very good, Aisha. So that is what I wanted to talk about today. I don't want to talk more because it has already become very heavy. But basically, some simple current affairs terms that you should remember, which is GDP, GNP, GDP growth rate, Human Development Index, Human Development Rank, UNDP, India at 131, poverty rates, poverty defined by calorie consumption, inequality defined by Gini index and the Lorentz curve, inequality spoken about and brought to notice by Thomas Piketty in his very famous book called Capital in the 21st Century. Decreasing inequality will require additional taxation by way of inheritance tax, death taxes, or estate taxes. Decreasing poverty will require more fiscal measures of taxation and of giving money through various schemes like direct benefit transfer, universal basic income, or Manrega. Finally, I talked about the issue of inflation and how inflation is controlled on one hand by the monetary policy of the RBI and on the other hand by the fiscal policy of the Ministry of Finance. So much if you remember, then I will be very happy. All right. So thank you very much for today's session. And I will, and somebody will announce to you when the next session is, when we will discuss some other issues. But this session, I wanted you to only focus on current economic affairs because that usually has a lot of questions coming. Afroz, you have a question?
Yes. Manrega you were mentioning. Could you explain a little bit on that?
Acha, you weren't here yesterday. We talked about Manrega yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Manrega is a cash transfer scheme. It was originally introduced in Brazil as a scheme called the Bolsa Familia scheme. In the Bolsa Familia scheme, what Brazil had done was that it had transferred money to families who were not getting 100 days of employment will be guaranteed to every rural household. And those 100 days you will be paid against work at minimum wages. So it is a cash transfer scheme, and the cash transfer scheme is used whenever you want to fight temporary poverty. All right. So thank you very much. Let's see. We will meet again hopefully on Monday. Yeah. Thank you very much. Good night, and try and see if you can remember some of what I have told you. All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for attending the tonight's class, evening's class. Please go ahead and send a greeting before you leave for your attendance. Have a good night.